sit in the cyberspace, where we are really building this awareness and culture across all of our networks, and that's will really build us a resilient and stable systems, if we may say. It is indeed quite a challenge time that we have been through. We live in a world that is usually continuously changing to a better world. To the security teams, analysts, engineers, investors, and to all of you here, joining us here or turning in from all around the world, welcome, and I hope you and your families are safe and healthy. I take immense pleasure in welcoming you all in this year's GISEC, a very important conference at an apt time indeed. It has been more than 15 months since we, as a matter of fact, met with this much of crowd right before the pandemic that stopped us and stopped the world in its start. And in that time, countless doctors, nurses, and other first responders who have been more than working to actually help us, more than being brave to be the light and shed the light for us all and allow us to continue actually working. They worked tirelessly and they worked actually days and nights to save lives, and we owe them all of our gratitude. So thank you for them all. There are some hidden soldiers as well during this year's pandemic. There were first digital responders, if we may call them. They represent all of you here, who I also want to express my deepest thanks to each one of you, our digital first responder. When everything was upended, when everything was overturned, you made sure that our kids and students still go to work or to classes, as well as all of our government still serve their citizens, as well as all of the researchers could collaborate across the whole world to bring us those vaccinations from that digital transformation and digital communication that they have. So with that all, we thank all of those first line of digital responders from the bottom of our hands. COVID-19 has fundamentally changed the way that we work and live. Many countries, as a matter of fact, have imposed many strategies and controls and to curb the speed of COVID-19, resulting in several businesses being affected. In fact, some countries, such as us, decided to live life as normal as possible and implemented many and several controls so that we can ensure that we will not be overrun by this virus, which is much harder to implement, but we did it. And GISEC today and all of you around us here really approve of the success of those measures, and we shall continue doing those together. Hence, we need to recognize that we are not only in the midst of a global pandemic, we are also at the center of a digital revolution. That revolution that fundamentally will change societies and economies around the world. Businesses intensifying their adoption of digital tools for sustainability and individuals amplifying their digital activities for continuity. While technology's advancement may be deemed savior in this regard, the heavier reliance, as we saw always, the heavier reliance on technologies and the internet also introduce new vulnerabilities and new threats, and it expands the attack surface and landscape, making a robust cybersecurity environment become more crucial for sustaining digital trust. While I reflect in the past year and the impact of the global biological pandemic, we realize that there is as well many similarities to the equal cyber pandemic that we are living at as well. We are currently experiencing that cyber pandemic. From the high infection rate we see in the cyber pandemic, or the viruses or the cyber viruses as well, to the similar infection prevention technique such as quarantining, isolation, and root cause analysis, to the cyber safety measures and controls, including the awareness and education. All of those are similarities between such cyber and biological pandemic. Cyber pandemic including cyber crimes, and we will be speaking today about cyber warfare as well as cyber terrorism. All of those are estimated to cost the world around $10.5 trillion annually. And this is really increasing as we go towards the 2025 as well. As a matter of fact, in just 2021 alone, at an approximation rate of $190,000 per second, cybercrime is estimated to impact damages worth more than $6 trillion globally. And that would be the world's third largest economy if we are to consider it as a country. The Middle East cybersecurity, as we are in this region, and the market is projected to grow from $15 billion in 2020 to $30 billion by 2025. And countries led by the UAE, an ambitious nation with a young digital connected population, are undergoing digital transformation at a rapid speed. With you all, with the help of the private sector, with the help of all of the public sector, and with the creativity and the innovation of all of the peoples around us. This envisioned transition into a global smart nation by innovating and deploying world-class disruptive technologies for better connectivities. Yes, emerging technologies have disrupted traditional businesses, jobs, lifestyles, but it also provided some solution to better secure the cyberspace landscape, such as the various protection solution of our core digital infrastructure and the hyper-connected landscape with the convergence of Internet of Things, big data analytics, cloud computing, and artificial intelligence. We must recognize that as much as we try to secure our infrastructure, sophisticated threats, actors will still find creative way to breach our systems and networks. We want to be able to detect those malicious cyber activities early, proactively, through an active monitoring of threats, and take swift action to address them and minimize the impact of such threats to users. However, technology is only one part of this whole solution. As cyber threats become increasingly sophisticated, with the advent of new technologies, there is a need to sustain an international collaboration to govern the behavior in the cyberspace and advance the security and trust that is essential to the effective functioning of the global digital economy. That collaboration, that international rule-based aspects is really an important aspect towards this resilient cybersecurity platforms. This is why the UAE and many countries around the world are redoubling our commitment to a multilateral collaboration that we are calling for the establishment of a global digital trusted platform, a trusted digital oasis, if we may call it, for the spread of trust, build an open collaboration, private, public, government, and between us all, and innovating that tackle digital transformation and the great digital benefit that can be expanded to all nations, including small nations or nations that need more support. GISEC is the conference that we choose to communicate and a platform where we could collaborate for this with all of the stakeholders in our digital ecosystem. And the opening of the Global Cybersecurity Congress will be the key platform that will really leverage to kickstart discussion in such multilateral international collaboration with private and public aspects, leading and paving the way to innovation and openness. Our key objective is to build a culture of resilience and secure all of our nations, and together we will take steps towards these objectives. My dear friends, colleagues from all over the world, let's join this important conference together and to work together and gather our energy, brainstorm ideas, and make use of this knowledge platform to wake away with insights and information needed to secure our future. Once again, I thank you all for joining us here today, and I thank those who helped us in organizing this conference, and I thank my fellow speakers, sponsors, and delegates for joining me here. I welcome each one of you and look forward to interacting with you all in this conference. Thank you very much.
And Dr. Mohamed, thank you so much, and thank you for agreeing just to stay with us for a few minutes so we can have a little bit of a chat here. And again, some serious figures there as you talk about crime, terrorism, warfare. I mean, this is where we're at, and the defense mechanisms really have to be here. You talk about redoubling your commitment in terms of multilateral cooperation. How actually can we as countries and as police forces and, you know, I suppose the guardians of this space, how can we work better?
So, as many of my friends and colleagues here know, and as many of them, again, international bodies as well, the information sharing and the trust that we built during all of this conversation, during all of this dialogue, is really the main idea towards this resiliency that we are trying to build. Trust is really the key word across many of the things that we have. Transparency as well goes towards that. So definitely with all of the private and public sectors we have today here, opening up information sharing and really working together in either designing or building or innovating new technologies will always help us towards really proactively monitor and really detect many of those attacks.
Now you're right, I think everybody I have spoken to who's going to be on panels here brought that word up, trust. And it's not easy because in different regions in the world too, not all countries are the best of friends, let's say. So again, how do you build that trust, and what can you really go out there to make sure that there's a coordinated effort? Because just one rogue state will put it all horribly wrong for us.
So the UAE has really built a very good model where we have more than 200 nationalities here in country. And they are really working towards one mission, one goal, is again to help that humanities, to secure those platforms, to provide that digital transformations towards the next level, and really leverage that artificial intelligence in many of those aspects. So knowing that main common as well as unified goal will really help us in building that trust. What's the main basis of that trust is the transparency. Building again that transparency and working together with many of the private and public sectors will really put those spaces and allows us to actually work on there. Maybe we take it step by step towards that. You cannot just reach the moon in one step. You have to take it those step by step and really show how good transparency is going through that. And this is what we already actually work with many of the colleagues that we have here, and that's what we're continuing actually to work with.
Now, and I know personally, you know, you're very passionately involved in this, and this is something obviously you want to, you know, do as, you know, your personal commitment and of course as head of cybersecurity as well in the country. But talk to us about, you know, you've talked about the consensus that's needed and almost a Cyber Geneva Convention. Is there a possibility of getting to something like this?
So the Cyber Geneva Convention is a term that's used by many of, again, other big companies or vendors who actually leverage and try to, let's call it, publish and work towards that Cyber Geneva Convention. So definitely it is an important concept. Definitely it is needed, especially at this time of cyber pandemic we see today, with the cyber warfare that is increased across many of those aspects, as well as the cyber crimes that is really increased to a really high rate. For example, in UAE, many of those cyber threats not only doubled, but also we saw it more than 300% of the last previous years. Many private sectors have been impacted. Many small businesses have been impacted. And by the way, they don't have the real value as well as the capability of defending themselves. Their intellectual properties have been stolen, their resources and even platforms have been compromised and even perpetrated and used as a pivot to another country's attacks. Who will protect them? Yes, they do all of the best that they can do. However, still there need to be some cyber Geneva Convention that make sure they are in a safe haven. They can do all of their missions as well as continuing all of their work as normal without really considering that there is an attack or there is someone is trying to stall or espionage campaigns against us or doing many of those aspects. So that term, actually, we definitely build on top of it and trying to really see how we can work it even to an international, multinational type of levels. And I know there are many open-ended working groups in the United Nations working towards really trying to achieve similar aspects.
Are we working, just before we close up, are we working fast enough, or do you think that we need to maybe put a little bit more effort and energy and speed? Because I think the bad guys are, occasionally we might hear that they maybe seem to be ahead of us sometimes.
They are. It's a cat and mouse type of campaign always, but I'm really blowing all of the technologies partners here. We are working, yes, hard enough, but we can do even more. Yes, we are working and innovating and creating many of those technologies, but again, we can do more because the reason you just mentioned, there are bad actors who are really leveraging same technologies that we leverage for the humanity, for the mission that we have, for the digital transformation. They are leveraging it for a bad as well as trying to attack and threat other nations. So we need to really put our hands together and really work harder in order to actually achieve such goals.
Well, we leave it there. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for opening this conference to your great encouragement and your tremendous enthusiasm and all the great work that's happening here in the UAE and particularly in your role as the head of cybersecurity. Dr. Mohamed Al-Kuwaiti, thank you again, sir. We look forward to talking to you.
Thank you very much.